How you guys doing, and welcome aboard the next video. Now today's topic has actually been brought to you by a friend of mine. Kyle suggested it after I talked about the Perfect Dark video game. So much appreciate to you, man. So this is for you. I hope you agree with this list, and if there's anything you want to add to it, please let me know. Now for those of you that don't know, bot games are basically AI that compete against you, kind of like racing games, or if you're in a shooting game and you want to do multiplayer but you don't have anybody to play with, and you don't have, like back in the old days before online play was a thing, you would play against bots or AI, artificial intelligence. And during that time period, it was a lot of fun because you could set them at an easy level and just spank that ass and just whatever. It was a lot of fun. Now, I'm going to go ahead and list, basically I believe it's 8 games that are some of the best ones that came out of the generations of PS2 and the original Xbox, and of course one for the N64 that started it all, that started this conversation to begin with. So the focus of this list will be first-person shooters in bot games. So without further ado, let's get started.
Fatality. Get over here! Hadouken! Mario! Here we go!
So of course, starting off this list at number 8 is Perfect Dark. Now the reason why this one's going to start off the list is because this is the game that started bot fighting. This is the game, very first time you go into a multiplayer and you can actually fight bots rather than other people. It also was the first time a ranking system was put in place as well. So that's something that you really should also know as well, and my buddy Kyle corrected me on some things that I left out in the Perfect Dark when I was talking about it. That was one of those things. Although I was focusing mostly on history, that was a good bit of information I forgot to mention. Now of course that would be the reason why this one makes it on the list, and it's the only N64 game that will be on this list. So every game from here on out will either be PS2, Xbox, or a combination of the both. Now another thing about Perfect Dark that I should also mention before we move on to number 7 is that you could also modify levels as to where drops will be, where shield drops will be, where weapon drops will be, what kind of weapons will drop in those areas. That was the first one to ever do any of these things, so that's something to really take a focus on as well when it comes to Perfect Dark. It set the premise, which is why I would make this list. It set everything in motion. Now of course, as I said, 007 GoldenEye was one of the main reasons why we have the way multiplayer first-person shooter games are done today. However, Perfect Dark is what set the entire premise of a bot game, multiplayer bot game, and of course customizational maps where you can customize how the matches will be, team deathmatch, things of that nature. That's how that is Rare basically just completely create all of what we have today for multiplayer first-person shooters. So coming in at number 7, a game I don't have, I wish I did, I'm still looking for, is Red Faction 2 by Volition, which is also published by THQ, and I do plan on doing a history video on THQ, for those that don't know. Red Faction 2, I owned that game way back in the day when it came out, and I gotta tell you, that game was a lot of fun. It was not quite like the first Red Faction, which I do own. But I gotta say, I was not expecting to have a railgun in that game, to be able to shoot through walls and hit the enemies with that. That was a really cool concept. That was really new to me. Railguns were not a real thing in video games until that game came out, so that was a new concept. It was, of course, Red Faction also came up with the idea of destroying the environment while you're playing in it. Something that you'll hear coming around with Bad Company, which is basically the very first Battlefield game to ever come out. Bad Company is what started the Battlefield franchise, but that's a story for another day. Now, Red Faction 2 was actually a really fun multiplayer game. It has really good bots, it has really good customizations. That's definitely a good one to pick up if you're looking to actually pick up bot games for classic generational games. Now, like I said, if you're looking for classic gaming when it comes to bot games, and are looking for Generation 6 and back, the only generations you're going to find are Generations 5 and 6 that have anything beyond that also has it, but anything before that doesn't. Unless you count fighter games and stuff like that, or racing games. But to me, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about first-person shooters. Now, coming at number 6 is another game I don't have and I really want to have. That's Star Wars Battlefront II, the 2005 version that was made by Pandemic and LucasArts. Made by Pandemic, produced by LucasArts. This game, even today, people are still saying it's better than the Star Wars Battlefront that we had that came out a year or two ago. I think it was 2 years ago now. And we have Star Wars Battlefront 2 coming out this year, I think, as well. And people today still believe the 2005 version was way better than the one that we recently got. So, and I have to say, I think I really do agree with that, because I did play Star Wars Battlefront 2. It was very easy to play. It was a bit challenging here and there, but at least you could actually get your ass kicked with style. With the new game, which I have played and I have ranked up in, I gotta say it's boring. You know, like there wasn't a whole lot you could do, and it was very limited on what the possibilities. There were just very limited. There was no main campaign mode, which is one of my big pet peeves. You gotta have campaign mode, and Battlefront 2 from 2005 actually really nailed that. Now, another thing that I should also mention to you guys is that Battlefront 2, the 2005 version, still has a huge online playing base. You have to go to a website, I think it's GameRanger.com or something like that, to find servers where people play this game. There are still tens of thousands of people that play it on a daily basis. It's such a great game, and it's literally considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest, Star Wars game of all time by many people. Of course, me specifically, I go with Knights of the Old Republic, but that's just me. Everybody has their own opinions, and I can't really disagree with them. That is a fantastic game. So that if you're looking for a bot game, that is one to get. Coming in at number 5 would be TimeSplitters. Now, I have every TimeSplitters game that they came out with, and if I have to pick any one of these, I have the first one on PS2, the other two are on the original Xbox. But if I had to pick any one of these, I would have to go with TimeSplitters 2. And TimeSplitters 2 was probably the best in the series. As far as the TimeSplitters series goes, I gotta say the second one wasn't my specific favorite when it came to campaign mode, but when it came to the multiplayer, this was definitely the better one. I like the third one's storyline because it was quirky and just funny. It was just hilarious. To me, it was so bad it was funny. So yeah, TimeSplitters 2 was actually developed by Free Radical Design, and it was produced by Eidos Interactive. So one of the really cool things about TimeSplitters 2 is that, you know, the many different weapon designs that you can have, of course, the customizational levels, the ranking system as well. Now, I also have to mention that when I played the first TimeSplitters, it was a disappointment. And I did play and beat it, but it was still quite a disappointment for me. Now, when it comes to the second one, a lot of fun. Third one, a lot of fun. I do have to prefer the second one when it comes to the bot play and the multiplayer, but I have to go with the campaign mode in the third one. That one was the one I prefer. Now, everybody has their different opinions. That's just mine. Now, coming in at number 4 would be the Halo series on the original Xbox, and the one that we're going to go with here is Halo 2. That's the one I'm more familiar with. And the thing about this is that I played this one so freaking often when I was growing up. When I was in my early teens, I was playing that like crazy. Like it was just going out of style. And I remember no-scoping in that game. That was basically where no-scoping was invented. That's when it was first a thing. That's when it first became an entire meme and everything. I mean, no-scoping just blew up from Halo 2. And I remember practicing so much on that game to the point where no-scoping was just a reflex action. I believe at one point I got a 4 in a row with one shot. I killed 4 people in one shot. And it was just ridiculous how much practice you could put into a game like that and just straight up spank its little butt like it owes you money. I mean, of course, in that one you can also customize your levels. You can put certain spawn points for your weapons in different areas. You can change them around. You can move them here. You can move them there. You could also have different grenades and all these other things. Of course, the swords were the most brutal. I figured out a cool trick with that. By pressing the X button, you can actually counter somebody's strike, and then you can strike them immediately after hitting the X button, countering it. And it kills them every single time. Most people never figured that out. That was really cool, because people like me would keep it to ourselves and be like, I don't know why you lost that sword fight, man. You had the drop on me. I don't know, maybe the game just favors me. But yeah, there's plenty of us that did that kind of stuff, that kept that information to ourselves. That was just the time period, that was just how people were. Of course, that was before people had strats that were starting to be more prevalent in the internet community. Nowadays, you can actually get that information like that. Back then, it was a lot more difficult. You had to figure things out for yourself, like how to double jump and things like that. But anyways, as we all know, the Halo series was developed by Bungie and was produced by Microsoft Game Studios. Now, of course, Halo 2, the Halo series is a big old, just awesome franchise. Not really much to really say there. The campaign mode is always amazing. I've beaten, something I did forget to mention is Halo 2, 3, and 4. I beat all three of those on Legendary. Beat them on Legendary. And it was not easy. I believe one of them I actually ran through the whole thing without dying on Legendary. I've done that once. I think that was on Halo 3 when I did that on. And I remember practicing so many times to do a run through on that, and it was just so much fun. Oh my god. Like, I would love to do speedrunning, but I just don't have the time. My son will be starting school here in the next 2 weeks, and I'm looking forward to that. That way I can start doing more videos. But anyways, let's just go ahead and move on to the next video. Move on to the next game. So coming in at number 3 is Quake III Arena and Revolution. Now, this is a game that was originally for PC and it transferred over into the consoles. And it was strictly going to be a multiplayer online and offline game. So obviously the bot mode on this game is strong. Of course, it has many of the same customizations as the previous games that we have talked about. And it was basically just all out. Just, you could do death matches, you could do a free-for-all, you could do all these things. And it was straight up a bot game from top to bottom. Coming at number 2 is Unreal Tournament on the PS2. Now, this one specifically was made by Epic Games and produced by Digital Extremes. It's a lot like Quake. Only arenas seem a bit darker in color scheme. There are significant similarities between the two, and of course, there's a lot going on here. These games are pretty much all really the same, to be honest, with some exceptions. Some of them have different mechanics, some of them are made by different engines. They're all made around the same time period. Now, of course, this is a very good one to actually get as well if you're looking for bot games. If you're looking for something that's a little more interesting, that has a little bit more to offer than what these last two I just mentioned have been giving, then you'll want what's at number 1.
Something that I also should mention is that back in this time period, games were very fast-paced. Nowadays, you don't really get that very often. Back then, games such as this were like the go-to games to be playing against other people. Because back in that time period, you couldn't actually go camping. Like, you couldn't camp out behind something or anything. Because the way the levels were designed, if you stuck in one spot, you were dead like that. And so that's the way games were back then. And they really should consider going back to doing that.
At number 1, Unreal Championship 2 on the original Xbox. Made by Epic Games and produced by Midway. This game right here is a slew of different things that really changed up and changed gears from the previous ones that I have just mentioned. This one is, it mixes up fighting and shooting. There are certain matches where you have to do fist fighting throughout the arena. There's others where you have to shoot each other. There's also a kind of fatality type ideal and mechanic in this game that's much like Mortal Kombat, only in the midst of battle between other players you can pull it off. It was also one of the first games where it introduced a ranking system where your rank will either go up or down depending on the kind of skilled players you go against. So if you fight against players whose skills are about as equal as yours or above yours, your ranking will go up. If you fight people whose rankings are lower than yours, your ranking will go down. Now also that you'll notice in this game is that the graphics is absolutely phenomenal as compared to the last two games that I talked about. And I don't know what it is, but every time I seem to talk about a game between the PS2 and the original Xbox, it always seems to be the original Xbox had better graphics. I don't know if that's really what went on there. I'll have to do a little more research on that, but that's what I've been noticing, a pattern there. But I gotta say, number one is definitely a game to get if you're talking about bot gaming. Now the reason why this video was brought to attention is because bot gaming is it's a mechanic that is dying out. People just, developers are just not making games that have bots anymore. It's all online, and that is an absolutely ridiculous thing. When you rely on online gaming, it really takes away from the flavor. Sometimes people, as my friend Kyle actually said, the best thing about it is that it gets you away from prepubescent children that sit there and curse or are too young to be doing these things. It gets you away from all that stupid, idiotic stuff. So that way you just fight bots, you don't have to listen to people whining and crying all day. You can just have fun with it instead of playing online and being surrounded by some of the most idiotic people that you can imagine. So, that's just one of those things that you have to deal with in today's community and today's gaming. Now anyways, I hope you guys actually enjoyed this video. I will be trying to do a history video up after this, probably in the next day or two. And you guys always remember 22 and stay classy, bros.